Hello and welcome to our how-to video on the Project Financial series in Mission Control. Mission Control offers several ways to capture your financials using different rates, and we'll be taking a look at one of them today. You have the option to use the standard, role-based, skill-based, and rate card in Mission Control. Today we'll be focusing on the standard rate option and how the financials are derived from it. The standard rate option allows you to set a day rate, which is divided by the hours per day to determine the hourly rate. So the hours per day is a value that you can set as a default that applies to all projects, or it is a value that you can set on an individual project. So the same rate the hourly rate applies to anyone who is involved within that project. And this method of rate calculation can be used to determine the billable or the cost values in your project. And the best part is you can specify whether the billable or the cost uses the standard, while the other uses a different rate calculation, or maybe both of them use the standard. So you could have a project where the billable values are calculated using the standard rate, while the cost values are calculated using the role-based rate. So we'll also take a look at how you can override the default values or the default rates that you have set on the project for certain time periods. And lastly, we'll also discuss why and in what scenarios you may want to use the forced financials recalculation. All right, let's jump into the demo and have a look at the standard rate. All right, so we have a project here where we'll be looking at the standard rate option. So I'll go ahead and edit the project and scroll down to look for the billing rate and cost rate fields. So you'll see I've already set that to standard here, but just keep in mind that you can change this around. So one of those values can be standard and another could be something else like role-based. We'll stick with standard for now, and whenever you're using the standard rate or any other rate for that matter, you want to make sure you specify the day rate. So we'll put in 1400 here and we'll put 700 over here. So what this is going to do is it's going to use the default hours per day value to figure out the hourly rates here. So the default hours per day is 8 hours, but you can change the default by going into the Mission Control tab and then into the control pad. From the control pad, if you just scroll down to custom setting, you'll find one here which says default hours per day. And in my org, I've set that to 7. So based on that, I expect to see 200 as the billable hourly rate and 100 as the cost hourly rate. So let's save. And we now see those updated rates come through. So now what you can also do is change the hours per day on an individual project basis. So this is done by updating the hours per day field on the project. So let's set that to 8 and update our rates here. So we'll set that to 2000. So if our default if our hours per day is 8 and the billable day rate is 2000, I expect to see a billable hourly rate of $250. And if our cost day rate is 800, I expect to see a cost hourly rate of 100. So I'll go ahead and save that. Edit it and we'll double check those values. So 250 and 100, that's looking good. Now we can go to the next part. So you'll see that I've already got a action in here before I made the rate changes. So I've got an action here with the action owner, the start and end date, the hour schedule billable, hour schedule non-billable. And I've also updated the field set to show some more custom fields like the hour scheduled value billable and hour scheduled value cost. And that's 0. And that's because I did not, the rate changes I made was after creating the action. And this is one of those instances when you want to run the financials recalculation. So if I just go and edit the project, I will see a field here called Force Financials Recalculation. So I'll go ahead and save that. What this does is once that's set to true, it runs a process in the background which will recalculate and figure out the right rates to use, the updated rates that you've set. And it depends, it usually updates very quickly. So I'll just go ahead and refresh my page. And depending on the size of the project, how many time logs you have, how many actions you have in your project, that will, so as you can see, I have got that field unchecked automatically. This means it's run successfully. And I can also see those figures have been updated here. So our billable hourly rate was $250. So 250 times the hour scheduled billable figure, which is 2 hours, that returns 500. So that's as expected. The hour scheduled value cost is 300. So any of the cost value fields, they use the total hours field. So in this case, this is scheduled, so it'll use the total hours scheduled. If it was completed, it would use the total hours completed. So we've got 3 hours, so that includes 2 hours billable and 1 hour non-billable. So that's 3 times the $100 cost hourly rate that we have, and that returns 300. So that's looking good. One other thing to keep in mind is that regardless of who's involved in the project, so as you can see, I'm the action owner. I am assigned some hours, but there is a contributor as well. So Arthur is the contributor. He's assigned 1 billable hour. But regardless of that, it's still using the same rate to determine the figures, the financial figures. So that's how you can use the standard rate. But you may also encounter a scenario where you need to adjust these rates. So instead of adjusting it directly on the project, because doing so on the project here directly would affect the whole project in its entirety. So all historical data would also be updated if you were to change the rates here. And that may not always be the case. So maybe the rate change only applies for a certain time period. And in that instance, you want to use the rate adjustment feature. So you can access the rate adjustment feature by using the manage rates button from the project. So you'll want to make sure this is added to your project page layout. So once you click into the manage rates page, it brings you to this page where you can create, update, and delete the rate adjustments for the project. So if I just go ahead and use that drop down, so this is just referencing that specific project. And over here, I can see that these are the default values that are, or whatever the values are from the project itself. And I can change them directly. And it's the same as updating it on the project itself. So it's going to apply throughout the project timeline. And you may lose historical data. So just want to keep in mind that you don't want to update it directly from here, if that's the case. Instead, you want to use the dates over here. So I'll set that to the 19th as a start date, and we'll set the end date to be the end of this year. And so that's when that rate applies for that time period. So we'll change the rate to 300, and we'll set the cost rate to 125. So click add. So as you can see, it's made that entry in there, and I can go ahead and add further entries. So maybe next year it's going to use a different rate. So that's up to you. So now we'll see different figures once we click save. Because we've made a rate change, we won't see those figures right away because rate change has been made and there were actions within the project. So I can go ahead and click edit and do the forced financials recalculation. Click save. So this is another one of those instances when you want to run the forced financials recalculation. So again, it's going to run that process in the background and update the rates for us. And it has updated those rates. Before we review how those rates have been calculated, let's have a look at where that record is, or to where those rates are pulling through from. So if you ever need to do if you need to do a check, so you can navigate to the rate adjustment related list on the project, and you'll see that record has been created. So it's saying that this is a standard rate type, and we can see the dates that we had input, the billable hourly rate and the cost hourly rate that we specified, and the role and skill that's left blank because that's used for the role-based and skill-based rates. Okay, so back to the project. So we'll have a look at how these figures are now being calculated. So the billable hourly rate that we had set was 300. So 300 times 2, that's giving us 600 for the hour schedule value billable. And our cost hourly rate was 125, and we've got 3 hour total hour schedule, so that returns 375. So that's working as expected, and that's how you can use the standard rate and how you can override the rates in different for different time periods. So that is the standard rate option in Mission Control. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at support@brico.com or using the link here. We've also got a list of very helpful resources like our very detailed user guide, a lot of our training video gallery, and the knowledge base and learning portal. All right, have a good day and see you in the next one.